Speak Out. With Sue Wittig on the right, Jeff Cohen on the left. As always, speaking out.
And welcome to tonight's edition of Speak Out. I'm Sue Wittig on the right side of the screen and the right side of the issues. And with me, hopefully, is a continuing guest, my new friend Lois Shapiro-Canter, president of the New York State National Organization for Women. We're going to have a dialogue today on a couple of things. We're going to start out with a discussion on male and female sports participation. It's coming soon to a high school near you. Should dollars spent on male and female sports participation be equal? Does that affect the sports programs at your school? Do you think it's fair? We want to hear from you. 1-888-RNN-CHAT. Lois, why don't we talk a quick overview about Title IX and Title X and let the folks know what we're going to be discussing.
Sue, I love coming down here to visit with you on the show, and of course Title IX is a very important law that was enacted many years ago, which requires that any educational institution that receives federal money provide equal funding for women's athletic programs as well as male athletic programs. And of course, over the last several years, we've seen an increase of funding for women's sports, and as a result, fortunately, we've seen many of the women out there reaching the Olympics, actually winning gold and bronze medals. So we're very excited about this long-run achievement.
Now, you gave a direct correlation between Title IX, which was established in 1972, we should point out, and the increased participation of women in the Olympics, for example?
Oh, absolutely, because of the fact that we have more universities, more colleges putting more emphasis on training young women to become more proficient in athletics. When you and I grew up, for example, schools to become as involved in athletics. Well, that's different today. We see more young women today and girls playing hockey, softball, soccer, all different types of sports. And what's happening is they're being taught younger that they have the same abilities as males have in order to play these sports. So as they grow up and they go on to college or they go on to other types of jobs, they're finding that they have a great ability to compete out there in the real world. So we're very excited about that.
Now, there's also some problems with this because obviously the basic premise is something I think we can all agree on, and that is that opportunities should be equal for men and women in every area where there is interest on the man's part or the woman's part. Now, the problems are these. Because the federal government has required this type of non-discrimination, has required opportunities to be equal, some of the male sports in colleges and universities are suffering. After all, not every college can equally fund both a man and a woman's sports program, especially when the potential females that might participate. And as a result, several major universities, such as Boston College or Boston University, have had to scale back.
Well, certainly I would push on behalf of the National Organization for Women that we look at all of the universities, and you'll find that there are a lot of young women out there. It's only in the last 2 decades, too, that we've had the type of interest by young girls and also getting the support that they deserve to get in these universities. So I think there's certainly an opportunity for us to all work together to have the lion's share of the funding for time memorial, and it's time for them to share that piece of the pot so that women can also get their interest in their sports.
Guys, you know, all our sports fans out there, you'll be calling in to let us know where you went to college or university. Was there a big football team, for example, or did you have a favorite basketball team? Universities who can afford, because they have the television contract to air the sports. Either eliminating their sports programs altogether or scaling them back because they simply can't afford to do this. Shouldn't there be some ways to answer that?
It's not going to happen overnight. Change is very gradual, as we know. So if we give the universities the support, certainly the state universities, we give the support by this legislation, by this governor to adequately fund girls' programs so as to not to take away from boys' programs. There's an opportunity for the government to get involved to make sure it's equal all the way around so that boys' programs are not affected negatively. Certainly, we have millions of dollars out there that is concerned. We just had a budget that was passed, and the governor, unfortunately, who has vetoed significant portions of that budget, which harm men and women in the state. And certainly, if we put some emphasis in this area, I think that we can work it all out.
Well, what does it mean for high schools, for example? If your high school has a sports program and does not equally fund and provide opportunities for the girls in their team, they can come under threat under this particular. When we come back, we're going to ask Lois if she thinks that women should be allowed to play professional football, for example. See women participating in sports all around the board, but I want to discuss this with you, Lois, because philosophically I agree that women and men should have obviously equal opportunity, whether we're talking about sports or anything else. But realistically, does now the National Organization of Women want to take this to its ultimate logical conclusion, and that is, for example, to mandate, to require that women be allowed to play, let's say, for the Buffalo Bills or the New York Giants?
Well, certainly, if a woman is able to play for the Buffalo Bills or the New York Giants, she's going to be a very big woman and a very strong, physically stout woman who's able to deal with that type of athletic activity. Certainly, that's not our first goal. Our first goal is to have enforcement of Title IX, to make sure that the funding of all of the athletic programs for women and girls in schools, high schools, or colleges are equal with those of boys and men. That's our first priority. And then, of course, as time goes on and as the women have this opportunity, they're going to form their own teams, and we're already seeing that happen, as you so aptly noted during that short commercial.
Is that good enough for you, though? Or, again, I know that's not your first goal or maybe even your second goal, but eventually does now want to see a requirement in the law saying that if a woman wants to apply to the New York Yankees, that she should be allowed to, and then, of course, we have to institute quotas and affirmative action, as now has proposed for other areas. Do you want to see that happen? Is that an ultimate goal?
I think that in the long run, we want to see women and girls really do well in their own athletic programs. And if there comes a point in time when women are able to compete equally on those teams, yes, that would be the answer to that particular question. That opportunity has not been provided. And of course, we know with affirmative action, we have to be careful with affirmative action. Affirmative action has not been implemented according to the law in a lot of different cases. A lot of times people who were not qualified were basically promoted based on being a woman, based on being a woman, a person of color,
Well,
perhaps.
that's true, but
let me just say that the goal of affirmative action was to deal with historic discrimination, to take qualified women, qualified people of color, and to advance them. So certainly, we would say in this particular case that we would want qualified women to be able to compete in those types of situations.
All right, so ultimately you want to see a law passed that allows women to play for the Buffalo Bills, the New York Yankees, and eventually then that would also mean that segregated sports, women's sports in the Olympics and men's sports in the Olympics would no longer be allowed either under that logic.
Well, I don't know, Sue, if we need a law for absolutely everything. Sometimes these types of social phenomenon take their natural course, and what happens over time is that women will be playing for teams and that coaches will be looking for women to play on these teams if they have the qualifications to be able to compete successfully. So I think that in society that we're going to be looking for that type of thing to occur first.
Well, I certainly think if now's pushing for women in combat, that women on the Buffalo Bills is probably not far behind. Let's go to our callers. Mike from Kingston, you're on Speak Out. Go ahead, sir.
I have 2 points. One, I did athletics for a couple of years. I find there are women out there who are just as talented in throwing a football and throwing and a baseball as men. So if they're going to start anything with women playing athletics, they should start it in the high school level and work their way up.
All right, so Mike, let me ask you a quick question then. So are you willing then to fund with your tax dollars another totally separate but equal sports program at your local high school for women?
I'm willing to see them integrated. So, like, if a woman wants to play, say, football, and she wants to try out for the position of quarterback or receiver or whatever, she should be able to give the same opportunities if a guy walked onto the field and said, "Coach, I want to play."
Okay, so if the woman, though, is not able to play and is not picked for the team, then, according to this legislation, the school would still have to initiate a program for her and her abilities that is segregated from the men. Do you agree with that?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes, to certain, that they should be able to do something with the women who want to play football, to have coaches to work with them so they can fine-tune their skills, so then if they want to get onto a team, they will have that opportunity after a period of time.
Yeah, unfortunately, we got to be very careful that we don't risk ending the programs for the boys because we can't afford to have equal programs for the girls, and in fact, sometimes the girls' interest is not equal to the boys. Florian from New Paltz, you're next on Speak Out. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hi. I'm not from Newburgh.
Oh, Newburgh. Okay, welcome.
Yeah, I've been watching the show. I got a question. Like you said, with the girls in sports, I think that should be good because I think it would cut down a lot of crime in the areas too.
All those girls
the
out there
girls that
committing
want
crimes?
Well, no. I mean, a lot of the girls are being, turned down by the schools and all that. That's to my knowledge. I mean, it should be equal rights.
Mm-hmm.
If the girl thinks she's able to go and play that game, I think she should have the chance and go for it. But then if she's not able to it, then she should be turned down.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, now, what does that lady next to you think?
Well, why don't you ask her?
Well, that's very exciting because let me just tell you my personal experience. I've watched my nieces grow up with the opportunities of having played all of these sports with incredible encouragement from school officials that I didn't have the opportunity to have when I was in high school. And now when they're going to college, they're already being trained and going into further athletic programs. So I think it takes time. We're not looking to cut back all male programs. We're looking to increase girl and women's programs. And I'm very glad to hear what you had to say.
Yeah, I too feel that I love it when my little niece gets out there on the field playing soccer. I want, however, to protect the programs that are already excellent and there for boys without bankrupting the taxpayers. So I think we need to go slow, and at least that point we can agree on. We'll be back right after this break with more of your phone calls, 1-888-RNN-CHAT.
If you are unable to reach us by telephone during the show, you can speak out by email at comments@rnntv.com or through the U.S. mail. Write us at Speak Out, WRNN, 721 Broadway, Kingston, New York, 12401. You may also leave us voicemail at 914-339-6200, extension 415. The outstanding comments we find in each will be reviewed on the air each week. Now, back to Speak Out.
And welcome back to Speak Out with Sue Wittig and my, again, very special guest who drives an hour and a half to get to this show.
Yes.
Lois Shapiro-Canter, president of the New York State National Organization for Women. We promise to continue to bring you what we hope are interesting dialogues between conservative and liberal women. And you, 1-888-RNN-CHAT. Let's go right to the phones. Richard from West Point, welcome to Speak Out.
Yes, how are you doing tonight?
Hi.
Good.
First of all, I'd like to say, football is a very heavy contact sport. And I don't know, when you start talking varsity sports for males and females when they're younger, both of the bodies are pretty much similar. But when you start getting into the collegiate level and then into the more mature level of the pros, things of that nature, it takes a lot out of a female's body. And with some of the injuries that some of these kids are coming into, I think it's hard on a male who has, some of these serious injuries, but can you imagine a female having that type of injury?
Yeah, the interest level, too, for women at the collegiate level is just simply not there for football. And yet again, some of the results of this legislation has been that, except for the major universities, they've had to scale back their sports because they can't afford to fund both programs. And the interest isn't there on the females' part. On the other hand, for soccer and other types of sports of that type, the interest has been there, and you have seen more female participation.
That's right.
So again, what I'm suspicious of is not these athletic programs. I like it when women have equal opportunities. What I'm suspicious of, though, again, is the federal government just mandating something and not allowing for the natural differences in interest and also the natural differences in the deep pockets of the people paying for the program. So that's Go ahead.
I think it's great that, that we do have to allow everyone. Equality is important for everybody. And even if it's just one person who wants the right to play, I think you should be given an opportunity. But you have to look at the long term. How long that one person may just want to play a sport just to say, hey, I'm the first person to break through. And then all of a sudden, a lot of others may try and may not be successful. But the long term is when the collegiate level and higher, it's just not there. They won't get in it because when a female gets injured, some of these types of broken bones and things of that nature, it messes them up for life, I think.
Yeah, and also, again, most females don't have the same level of interest. But Lois, jump in on this.
Well, I'd like to, because I've seen my husband get pretty broken up by playing rugby. So, and he's a big guy, but I know some women who are pretty big and pretty sturdy, and I can very well imagine them playing football. So I think there should be opportunity for the women who can do these types of things. But certainly, we do need laws for certain types of things in our society. We had a fight for women's right to vote. We had a fight over 150 years ago for women to have the right to own their own property, to be able to sign contracts, to be able to have custody for their own children. It wasn't just the natural evolution of things. We had to fight for these laws. So laws are helpful and are necessary in certain circumstances. The question is how are they enforced? How are they applied? Are they reasonable when they're applied? And that's what we really have the discussion about tonight. So certainly we want the laws to be applied correctly, but certainly we don't want to backstep in terms of all the advancements we've had for young girls who are really doing well out there in the athletic world.
We're going to talk a little bit more about this, 1-888-RNN-CHAT. It does have specific ramifications, though, for your local district, because if they are required, again, to have totally equal but separate programs, just as good as the boys' programs right away, they often can't afford it, and in order not to break the law, they scale back on one when they can't advance the other. So what I'm calling for is a little more flexibility in the law and not a federal mandate which is going to dictate to every local school system regardless of their individual ability to pay and the interest level of the women. Lois, would you agree with that? Should we amend Title IX so to allow for differences in different school systems?
Oh, absolutely not, but I think you can anticipate that response from me because certainly schools across the country right now aren't following Title IX to begin with, so to scale it back, it would give them even more slack to not even move any closer towards complying with it. What they need to do is look at their budgets, look at their priorities, readjust their priorities. You know, I've heard arguments from people my entire life, and certainly at a university I recently spoke at, where some male athletic individuals were concerned about, well, the males programs bring in a lot of money to the university, and shouldn't those be funded? And I said, yes. I said, but then I told him how I was raised, where I grew up in a house with brothers, and everything centered around sports, which is great. What I did was I learned how to play everything. Did I get that support at school? No, I didn't. It's only the next generation that's been getting that support. So I think we need to remind everybody that we don't want to go backwards. We want to keep going forward.
Okay, we got to go to break, but let me interrupt to say that that's why I think we got to go a little bit slower. We're going to come back, 188-RNN chat with your phone calls.
If you are unable to reach us by telephone during the show, you can speak out by email at comments@rnntv.com or through the U.S. mail. Write us at Speak Out, WRNN, 721 Broadway, Kingston, New York, 12401. You may also leave us voicemail at 914-339-6200, extension 415. The outstanding comments we find in each will be reviewed on the air each week. Now, back to Speak Out.
And welcome back to Speak Out with Sue Wittig, Lois Shapiro-Canter, and your phone calls. 1-888-RNN chat. Let's go right to the phones. We've got Mary Alice from Dover. Welcome, Mary Alice.
Hi. I was calling in with just a comment about that females are now being taught to be more proud of their intelligence, and they can really use that. I don't understand why the emphasis on sports. Now, I went through professional arm wrestling, and I did a wonderful job at it. I won, multiple trophies. I could physically be a football player. However, why do that to my body?
Well, that's what we were talking about earlier, where the level of interest on female parts for some sports is certainly not as great as it is for males, and therefore I wanted to emphasize that although I'm not against this program by any means, I am, as usual, against the federal government telling us what we should do in our local communities when, for example, maybe you would have liked to have seen a women's professional arm wrestling team started. I have to admit that's a new sport for me. But the federal government says, no, you've got to have equal programs for the boys' programs that are already established. Why not let the local communities decide? I think that's the major area of disagreement that you and I have.
Well, I think so. And I think that, you know, in our society today, as I was saying before we took the break, we have to continue on the positive trend that we're on, which is to keep the funding being generated towards women and girls programs, have it increase over time in bigger increments, and we're going to see equality over time. But it wouldn't be happening, Sue, unless we had a law in place. It wasn't happening before.
But you know what you're never going to see is you're never going to see physical equality, and that's the basis on which people play sports. You know, it would be impossible to mandate that a certain number of football players on a team be female, and yet that's the ultimate logic if we carry this to its conclusion. Now, I want to see equal opportunity, but I don't want to see the federal government mandating leisure activities.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things, Sue. What I was talking about simply is that we continue the funding for women's athletic programs at universities and colleges and high schools. I'm not really talking about, you know, requiring that athletic teams definitely hire women to play on those teams. Certainly, I think the trend is going to go that way in time, but I don't think that it's going to happen for a while.
Okay, well, thanks for watching. We'll be back on Monday with more of the new explosive developments in the Whitewater investigation. We'll see you then.